Close your eyes and picture a reptilian humanoid. Scales instead of skin, vertical slit pupils, cold, alien intelligence. You're thinking science fiction, right? David Icke conspiracy theories? Ancient aliens nonsense? Now open the Mahabharata, one of the two great Sanskrit epics of ancient India, compiled between 400 BCE and 400 CE. Flip to the Adi Parva, the first book. You'll find detailed accounts of the Nagas. They are serpent people who lived in an underground kingdom called Patala, not described as gods, not presented as folklore, documented as historical fact. They had names, cities, political structures, and according to this ancient text, treated as seriously as the Bible or the Quran by over 1 billion people today, they interbred with humans. This isn't fringe literature. This is one of the foundational texts of human civilization, and it describes reptilian humanoids the way a modern encyclopedia describes Denmark. Welcome to the Midnight Archives. Tonight, we're asking a question that makes historians uncomfortable. What if ancient mythology was just bad science, and they really believed lizard men were real? What is the Mahabharata? Before we talk about serpent people, we need to understand what the Mahabharata actually is. It's not a novel. It's not fantasy. It's a massive historical epic, over 100,000 verses, making it 10 times longer than the Iliad and Odyssey combined. For context, if the Mahabharata were a modern book, it would be roughly 1.8 million words. That's about 15 average novels. The entire Lord of the Rings trilogy is about 500,000 words. And this wasn't written by one person. It was compiled over centuries by multiple authors, poets, and scholars, all working to preserve what they believed was actual history. The text claims to record events from the Dwapara Yuga, an ancient age that, according to Hindu cosmology, ended around 3102 BCE. Whether you believe that dating or not, the important thing is this: the authors believed they were recording history. The Mahabharata documents massive wars, political dynasties, technological achievements, and yes, non-human intelligent species that interacted with humanity. The Nagas are mentioned over 1,200 times in the text. They're not background creatures. They're not metaphors. They're treated exactly like every other kingdom and race in the epic, with genealogies, territories, and documented interactions with humans. King Takshaka, Queen Alupi, Prince Sesha. These aren't symbolic names. They're individuals, described with the same historical weight as Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar. And here's what the text says about them. They were intelligent, technologically advanced, and lived primarily underground in a realm called Patala, which existed beneath the Earth's surface. They possessed great knowledge of minerals, poisons, and what the text calls mystic powers, which might have been advanced technology. They weren't universally hostile. Some allied with humans. Some married humans. Arjuna, one of the 5 Pandava brothers, the heroes of the Mahabharata, literally marries a Naga princess named Alupi. Their son, Iravan, is described as half human, half Naga. This is presented as fact. The Nagas, not myth, but history. Let me read you a passage from the Adi Parva, Book 1, Section 3. The Nagas are possessed of great strength and prowess. They live in the regions below the earth. They are capable of assuming any form at will and are fierce in battle. The chief among them are Shisha, Vasuki, Takshaka, and Karkotaka. Notice the language. This isn't poetic. It's descriptive. Clinical, even. The text goes on to describe Patala, the Naga homeland. It is a realm of great beauty, filled with palaces of gold and jewels. It exists in the subterranean regions, far beneath the kingdoms of men. Later sections describe specific encounters. In the Vanaparva, Book 3, Arjuna descends to Patala and is welcomed by the Nagas as an honored guest. He's not fighting monsters. he's engaging in diplomacy. The text describes Naga architecture, their weapons, their social hierarchy. Alupi, the Naga princess, is described as beautiful, intelligent, and possessing knowledge of warfare and healing herbs. When Arjuna and Alupi have a son, the text doesn't treat it as supernatural. It's just recorded, the way you'd record any royal marriage between kingdoms. This is important. The Mahabharata differentiates between devas, gods, asuras, demons, rakshasas, hostile spirits, and Nagas, serpent people. Each category is distinct. The Nagas aren't supernatural. They're just different. Another intelligent species sharing the earth. How ancient texts recorded truth. Here's where it gets interesting. We modern readers have been trained to divide ancient texts into two categories, history and mythology. But ancient writers didn't think that way. To them, everything was history. The question wasn't, is this real? The question was, how do we categorize this information? Think about Pliny the Elder's Natural History. Written in 77 CE, Pliny was a Roman admiral, a serious scholar, and he wrote what he believed was a comprehensive encyclopedia of the natural world. In the same text, where he accurately describes dolphins, volcanic eruptions, and astronomy, he also documents dog-headed men called cynocephali, humans with no heads whose faces are on their chests, and people with feet so large they use them as umbrellas. Was Pliny lying? No. He was compiling reports from travelers, traders, and earlier scholars. He was doing his best with limited information from distant lands. The Mahabharata works the same way. Ancient Indian scholars didn't have our categories of fantasy versus reality. They had things we've seen, things we've been told about, and things we've inherited from older texts. And Nagas fell into the second and third categories. Travelers claimed to have encountered them. Earlier texts mentioned them, so they were recorded as real. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Multiple independent sources said the same thing. The creatures, from India to Sumeria. The Mahabharata wasn't alone. Thousands of miles away, in ancient Sumeria, clay tablets from 4000 BCE described the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens and taught human civilization. And in multiple texts, including the Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh, these beings are described with serpentine features. Enki, one of the primary Anunnaki, is called the Serpent Lord. He's depicted in carvings with scales, sometimes with a serpent's body and a human head. The Sumerian king list, a text historians treat as partially historical, claims that before the Great Flood, kings ruled for impossibly long lifespans. Some scholars believe this is mythology, but the text itself presents it as chronology. And these early kings? They're associated with serpent imagery. Now jump to Mesoamerica. The Popol Vuh, a sacred book of the Quiche Maya, compiled in the 1500s, but preserving traditions thousands of years old, describes Gukumats, the feathered serpent. But here's what's important. Gukumats isn't just a god. He's described as a being who walked among humans, taught them agriculture and astronomy, and then departed. The Aztec Codex Chimalpopoca does the same for Quetzalcoatl. These texts describe him as a tall, pale-skinned, bearded figure with serpentine characteristics who came from across the sea, taught advanced knowledge, and promised to return. Hernan Cortés, arriving in 1519, was initially mistaken for Quetzalcoatl's return, a confusion that helped him conquer an empire. But why did the Aztecs believe a serpent man would return? Because their historical texts said he was real. Chinese chronicles and conquistador reports. In Chinese historical records from the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, we find the dragon kings, Long Wang. These aren't the fire-breathing monsters of European fantasy. Chinese dragons are intelligent, serpentine, often humanoid, and according to texts like the Shanhai Jing, classic of mountains and seas, They ruled underwater kingdoms and occasionally interacted with human emperors. The Shan Hai Jing, compiled between 400 BCE and 200 CE, catalogs hundreds of creatures, geographical locations, and ethnographic details. Some of it is clearly mythological, but much of it has been proven accurate, describing real animals, real plants, real places. And in the midst of this quasi-encyclopedia, detailed accounts of dragon people living in subterranean seas. The text describes their cities, their diet, their social structures, just like the Mahabharata described the Nagas. Now let's jump forward to the age of exploration. Spanish conquistadors, exploring the Americas, sent back reports of strange creatures. Fray Diego de Landa, writing in the 1560s, documented Maya beliefs about serpent men who lived in caves and cenotes. But he didn't just record beliefs, he recorded sightings. Local guides claimed to have seen these beings. Some Spanish soldiers claimed the same. In 1585, the Spanish explorer Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas published Historia General, documenting indigenous accounts of reptilian humanoids living in the jungles of Central America. Were they lying? Mistaken? Or were they doing exactly what Pliny did, recording what they were told and what some claim to have seen? The Hopi people of North America have oral traditions, later transcribed by anthropologists like Frank Waters in the 1960s, describing the Snake Brothers, reptilian beings who lived underground and helped humans survive ancient cataclysms. Different continents, different cultures, no contact between them. Same description. Why this still matters today? Here's where it gets really weird. In 1988, Bishopville, South Carolina, a 17-year-old named Christopher Davis is driving home at 2 a.m. when his car gets a flat tire. As he's changing the tire, something attacks him. A 7-foot-tall bipedal creature with green scales, red eyes, and 3-fingered hands. Davis barely escapes. He files a police report. Sheriff Liston Truesdale investigates and finds scratches on Davis's car consistent with his story. Footprints are discovered in the area. 3-toed reptilian. The local media dubs it the lizard man of Scape or Swamp. It becomes a joke, a tourist attraction. But here's what nobody talks about. Davis's description matches the ancient texts perfectly. Bipedal, scaled, intelligent eyes, not animalistic, but aware. Just like the Nagas, just like the descriptions from Sumeria, China, and Mesoamerica. In 2000, Mexican police officer Lorenzo Fernandez documents an encounter with what locals call El Chupacabra, but his official report describes a bipedal reptilian creature, not the dog-like monster pop culture imagines. In the 1990s, researcher John Rhodes compiled hundreds of modern encounter reports, independently, from people who'd never read the Mahabharata or heard of the Anunnaki. The descriptions are consistent. Underground dwellings, technological advancement, avoidance of human contact, serpentine features, vertical pupils, scales, same creature. Thousands of years apart? So what's going on? 3 possibilities. 1. Human imagination independently creates the exact same creature across every isolated culture throughout all of history. Possible, but statistically unlikely given the specificity of the details. 2. Ancient travelers encountered large reptiles, monitor lizards, crocodiles, and exaggerated them into humanoid form. This explains some accounts, but doesn't explain the consistent descriptions of intelligence, technology, and underground civilizations. 3. Something else. Maybe our ancestors encountered a species we've lost track of. Maybe they still exist, hidden in deep caves and ocean trenches we've never explored. Maybe mythology is just incomplete science. Or maybe, and this is the most unsettling possibility, maybe we forgot. The Mahabharata is over 2,000 years old. It's been continuously studied, translated, and revered by billions of people as a sacred historical text. And it says, clearly and repeatedly, that intelligent serpent people were real. Sumerian tablets say the same thing. Chinese chronicles say the same thing. Mayan codices say the same thing. At what point do we stop calling it mythology and start asking, what did they actually see? I'm not saying David Icke is right. I'm not saying lizard people run the government. But I am saying this. When independent sources across thousands of years and thousands of miles all describe the same thing, dismissing it as just myth is intellectually lazy. Pliny the Elder documented dog-headed men because travelers told him they existed. Medieval scholars reprinted those accounts because they trusted ancient sources. The same thing happened with the Nagas. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe they misidentified animals, exaggerated stories, or fell victim to hoaxes. Or maybe, just maybe, they saw something we haven't. The Mahabharata asks us to believe in serpent men. Modern witnesses describe the same thing. So I'll leave you with this. What else did we forget to remember?